Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. Kind of changed up the cadence a little bit there. Anyway, it is Wednesday, July 30th, 2025, and today we are talking about how many acres can one person reasonably farm. High tunnels is ecological traps with a little cutworm digression in there, and storing landscape fabric in a way that mice don't think it's just kind of like a gift for them, like some weird fabric-y mansion. So let's do it. All right, welcome to Tilth Wednesday. We forgot Tilth Tuesday yesterday, and to be honest, I will probably forget more in the future, but rest assured that at least one day every week this year, generally Tuesdays, will be brought to you by our good friends over there at Tilth Soil. If you're looking for compost or propagation mix, check out tilthsoil.com. Link will be in the show notes. All right, so happy Tilth Wednesday, everyone. I hope you all are doing well and that the week is off to a generally good start for you. How are the gardens going? How about your sanity? I know that late July/early August can be a tough time in the gardens because we are all whooped and only really halfway through the bulk of the selling season, at least, with May, June, and July in the books, but still August, September, and October to go. Then, of course, you've got that whole winter farming thing, if that's your speed. I know several southern farmers who take some chunk of this time off in the summer because August can be such a brutally difficult, hot, and frankly somewhat boring month to grow food in because there are only so many crops that will tolerate the heat when you live in a hotter region. Plus, it's a nice time to find a beach or a creek or a hiking trail or whatever if you can and just, breathe for a minute. So I hope you all are holding up okay, and if you aren't, definitely take a minute to rest and evaluate what you might do differently next year to make it a little bit easier. Rest often leads to higher productivity. Rest is also just, nice, and you've earned it. Anyway, we are still trying to get caught up on Patreon questions, so I'm going to keep rolling on them today and tomorrow, then get back to something a little bit more normal for next week. And by normal, I guess I just mean like Farmer Jesse rants about random things he wants to rant about. Anyhow, our first Patreon question comes to us from Sunny DeViles, who writes, quote, "Hey Jesse, are you managing an acre of veggies solo?" End quote. And great question. Thank you. So the answer is no, at least not for market, nor would I with the crops that we grow. That would be a lot. In my opinion, depending on what you grow and your initial investment and how you sell your produce, one person maxes out at about a third of an acre for a production farm like ours, like a market garden. For a home garden, you can grow more. It just depends on what you're growing on and your energy level. Now, can you grow on more land than that for a market garden? Totally. When you're young and without kids and time is a construct, sure. Go nuts. But by and large, the ratio I've come across for most farms who grow mixed intensive vegetables is roughly like 3 people per acre. Our max actual production was probably around 3/4 of an acre on this farm. I often say it was an acre. That really includes mowed areas and plots that we took out of production to rest them, plus a miniature soccer field in there. So really 3/4 of an acre of actual production with an acre under management. Anyway, that 3/4 of an acre of actual production required 2 full-time farmers, me and 1 employee, plus Hannah, working about 10 hours per week in the wash pack shed and delivering and handling invoices and all that stuff. Now, if you're farming with tractors, that can change the calculus a bit, but for lettuce, green onions, beets, carrots, that sort of stuff, that is very hands-on, labor-intensive, and requires hand harvesting for the most part, plus washing and selling and all those things. 1/3 of an acre per person is about as much as I would recommend for an intensive market garden, at least for a place to start. Most small family market gardens think they need 5 to 10 acres. They probably only really need a slightly large backyard. Now, if you want to add animals and orchards and have the capital to do so, then obviously you would need more land for that. Now, we own in total just under 6 acres, I think, but a lot of our land is in woods, and it's so far back on our property that it just kind of hangs out there for the local woodland ecology, and our neighbor mows it from time to time to just kind of keep it in check. And I like it that way. It's nice to know that that area will pretty much always just be forest for our wood thrushes and those sorts of things. And not to mention it's too wet to grow back there anyway. Hannah and I did a full acre intensive market garden several times, actually a couple years by ourselves. And it just, I don't know, it just about killed us. So we cut that in half, which was a good size for the CSA we were doing at the time. I think it was 50 members plus a farmer's market, and gave us a lot of space where we could rest beds in cover crop for more time. So I'm not saying there isn't wiggle room there. For instance, some growers will use things like landscape fabric to cut down on weeding. Like I mentioned, tractors, all those things will make it easier to grow on more land. But I think that sort of 1 acre to 3 person ratio is a good starting point for a market garden. You can always grow go into more space or pull back, just depending on what you grow, how you sell it, your age, energy level, etc. I prefer, now that we've done both, to start small and grow out, because the opposite is just, it's more expensive, i.e. opening up a bunch of garden space and then pulling back. It just costs more money to do that because it costs a lot of time and energy. But everyone is going to have a different approach. There is no real right way to do it. Moreover, as you dial in your crop systems, you may find that you can easily move into a bigger space because you have good standard operating procedures, SOPs, established, or you may find that you don't need nearly the space that you thought you would because your customers mostly just want arugula and lettuce, and that doesn't take much space at all to produce. Anyway, I hope that's helpful to your question. Make sure Patreon members to get your questions and or topics in on the July thread, or wait a couple days for the August thread. I mean, maybe it'd be more than a couple days. That's kind of how I roll. That's totally up to you. Anyway, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, high tunnels and the bugs that love them a little too much. BRB.
Hey Growers Daily crew, welcome to my backyard garden here in Phoenix, Arizona. This is the plant that I am most proud of this season, and mostly because it's actually on its third season with me here. And this is a bell pepper. I got some pretty good harvest from it this past spring, and looks like it's starting to put on some more blooms here now, and yeah, really proud of it.
Today's episode is brought to you by Farmhand. If you're listening to this, you probably found 5 rare minutes to breathe, but what got pushed back further down the to-do list to make that happen? If it's your CSA newsletter, you're not alone. Farmhand's new newsletter builder was made for busy farmers. It automates weekly emails, drives add-on sales, and makes it easy to keep your customers in the loop without spending hours behind a screen. It launches this summer, but our listeners can request early access now. Visit farmhand.partners/no-till. That's farmhand.partners/no-till. All right, back to the show. If you, the listener, are enjoying this podcast, getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. If this show brings you maybe a couple dollars worth of value every month, that would be awesome. I hope it does. You can chip in over there at patreon.com/no-till-growers. I will try to get to questions from everywhere that questions come in, but I will always get to those Patreon questions. Now, today's second Patreon question comes to us from Patreon member Austin at Vital Root Farm, who writes, quote, "Hi Jesse, 2 hoop house questions. Of course, take them how you like. First, I'm in my second year of growing long season crop in a hoop house with roll-up sides. I love it, but I'm always saddened to see clouds of insects, the good and the bad, stuck in the peak of the frame. It seems to be a trap for them. They fly in the side and then up. It seems counterproductive to have an ecological farm with a giant indiscriminate insect trap. I don't think I can add a ridge vent to this hoop design, which is the only thing that I think could help. Any thoughts? Second, in the same hoop house, I have lost an unacceptable amount of pepper plants to cutworm. Whenever I look up how to manage cutworms without chemicals, the top advice I get is to till. Any thoughts on no-till management of cutworms at a mid-size scale? Thanks for this amazing content," end quote. All right, thank you, and great question here. And let's start with the first part about insects, both good and bad, getting trapped in a high tunnel, because this is what we call an ecological trap, and ecological traps are 100% a bummer. Now, if the insects are getting temporarily stuck in the top, you are probably losing some insects, but at night they are likely to kind of come down and leave that area, hopefully. The ridge vent would no doubt help with that, and we don't get clouds of insects stuck in the top of that tunnel ourselves. And I don't know how hard it would be to retrofit one of those to any old tunnel. You just have to call our friends over at Rimmel and just see. But it may not be necessary anyway. I suspect you are losing fewer insects who just can't make it out of the top than you might fear, though of course that would require study. So I can't say for sure. What definitely does often happen and can consume a lot of bugs in terms of high tunnels is there is an awkward gap between somewhere on the tunnel, maybe a fold in the plastic or a tiny gap near the door, and the insects kind of like mosey in there and then get stuck and or fried. What I would recommend in those situations is to find some problem areas and then buy some UV treated greenhouse tape and then sealing those areas off. Taping off those areas may do the trick nicely, just to keep them from building up and you from losing the good guys. We don't have any major places where bugs collect in our tunnel now that I can tell, and although I do think the ridge vent plays a part in that, I also think that the tunnels we have now don't have that issue so much, and just like in general, just by the design. I know that an old tunnel that we built had corners like with folded plastic in the sides where butterflies and all sorts of other stuff would get stuck, and that was depressing, so I feel you here. I can't remember what we did for those spots. Maybe we taped them, or maybe I just cut the plastic off. I can't remember. But anyway, yeah, it is possible to address that some way. Now, on the cutworms, this is a pest that we have had in the past, and it's not my favorite. Not that I have a favorite pest, but it's definitely not one of them. What we've observed is that cutworms often arrive in the first year after breaking in new ground, and then after that, they subside. I'm not sure why that is exactly, but there is also quite a few different species of cutworm, so it may be specific to ours out here in Kentucky. When we would get them, however, we would start to see a plant drooping and then dig around the base, usually pretty shallow, like an inch or so under the soil, to find a cutworm there, just completely girdling the plant. Then we would go down the row and pick out any more that we would see sort of preemptively or preventatively. Rarely did we see them do any like significant damage, but also significant damage is relative, right? We were doing over 2 acres of vegetables, so if we lost a couple pepper plants, it really wasn't a huge deal. If you have only like 20 pepper plants and you're doing them in a tunnel where that space is so valuable, well, that's like what, 10%. So that's comparatively a bigger issue. Anyway, the biggest thing, and frankly, this goes for almost every pest, but especially the worm-like ones, is the exclusion netting and crop rotation are going to be your best friends next season. The moths have to be able to get to the base of the plant in the spring to lay the eggs that turn into the pests after roughly, I think cutworms take like roughly a month, depending on the species and the location and the temperatures and all that stuff. So having those susceptible plants covered in the spring, again, especially after that first year where you break into a new plot of ground, will make a huge difference in preventing, cutworms next year. Then you will want to rotate away from that area with your Solanaceae crops so that you are not planting a fresh plate of food for the cutworms of next season. I know this will be a somewhat annoying theme throughout the time that I am alive and talking about gardening, but pest management really comes down to the best soil management possible. Keep it covered, planted, and undisturbed as much as you can. Good timing on your plantings, crop rotations, some help from the beneficials in your life, and potentially some row cover or insect netting when planting slightly out of season, like peppers going into cool soil or planting into an area that had a pest problem the year before, or potentially into newly formed gardens where the biology and available nutrients may not be established yet. That set of things I just described, that manages like 99% of pests right there. Of course, there will be some examples of pests that just don't take the hint. Ours is kind of harlequin beetles. They don't seem to always get the hint. But for the most part, those few things will do the trick. Anyway, I hope that's helpful, and thank you for the fun question, Austin. All right, up next, we'll take a quick break, and when we return, storing landscape fabric. Be right back. All right, our third and final Patreon question of the day comes to us from Lindsay, who writes, quote, "How do you store your sandbags and frost fabric in the off season? I want to be efficient and keep these supplies near the garden, but when I store them in a garden chest, the mice say thank you and destroy them. Do you hang them in a shed? And if so, do the mice still make nests? Any insights for properly storing these kinds of seasonal tools would be much appreciated." End quote. Awesome. I love this question. Thank you, Lindsay. Great stuff here. All right. So first, I should say we don't use sandbags, but not because I have anything against sandbags necessarily. Honestly, they would be quite helpful to us and can be a great tool. We just have so many posts and large stones that those end up being the weights we use for tarps and frost blankets throughout the season. So I don't just have piles of T-posts laying around when we're not doing tomato trellising. So having them as weights gives them a second life, as it were. So for storing those, I guess, for those, I usually just have like a large old piece of tarp that lives out of its life being a central collection zone, kind of centrally located just for where I may be using them. That's where I can kind of store those weights out of the way, but also out of the grass. So that in the summer, I'm not mowing them over or spending a bunch of time looking for them, which is nice. So mice, don't tear those up because mice are none too keen on metal or rock, but the fabric I can see being a problem, and certainly they will build nests in our fabric as well. If you had a covered space where you could stack them neatly out of the sun but not fully cover them, that may help with your mice issues on the sandbags. Or those heavy duty racks that kitchens use, like that they put their, like stock pots and stuff on, could be a good option for storage. Sometimes you can find those cheap, like old semi-rusted ones for relatively affordable prices that restaurants may have to upgrade or that they're getting rid of, or if a restaurant's going out of business or something. That could be a cool option. Our fabric storage is pretty simple. We create a daisy chain out of the fabric as we bring it in, from the field. Okay, real quick daisy chain tutorial. You take your row cover, you make like a hoop out of it, right? Just like that, nice and big. And then you reach through that hoop and you grab the material and you make another hoop, right? Another hoop. Reach through that, grab the material, make another hoop, reach through that, grab the material, and so on. It is so hot outside. Boop. And then we just toss it over a few PVC pipes that we have affixed to a wall using like kind of heavy duty brackets. Basically, we bought a few sturdy brackets, cut a few pieces off of some 1.5 inch PVC pipe, and then put the pipes sticking out of the wall at say like 5 feet high, maybe just a few feet out. Then we just drape the daisy chain over the fabric on top of that. Now, mice will still get in there for sure. I don't see any way, to keep mice out entirely without sealing it off in plastic or in totes, which to me would potentially just increase the risk of rot or mice habitat from holding in moisture and possibly decreasing the lifespan of the fleeces. Our cats help with mice, of course, as do our snake populations, but frustratingly, mice are always going to be around gardens. I do think that having the frost blankets hanging out in the open air is a bit less tempting for mice, though slightly more tempting for things like wrens and sometimes wasps, which is an exciting surprise. Anyway, I would be curious to hear what other people might suggest on this front, so put those in the comments section and we will get to that on Feedback Friday. Otherwise, I think that will do it for this Wednesday edition of Growers Daily, Tilth Wednesday. Don't forget, No-Till Growers is now officially a nonprofit 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. If you're like, that sounds cool, go down to the show notes section and you can find information about how to support us. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That's an easy way to help us out. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor this show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at notillgrowers.com. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music, Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing, and the team at No-Till Growers. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. Pick up a hat. I decided to rock the corduroy one today, which is fun. It's a good choice. Or a copy of the Living Soil Handbook from notillgrowers.com to support our work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/notillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or you sign up in the month of July, you get a shout on the show. So big shout outs today to Tom Walker. So, as you will remember, our friends just started their dream farm, the pizza farm, and right across the street, a new farm opened up, just without any warning, burger farm. So on one side, you had pizza farm. On the other side of the street, you had burger farm. So on the one hand, this could be like one of those comedic, friendly competitions and feels like the story this would be, right? But it does not go that way at all. When burger farm and pizza farm open up, strange things begin to happen. One night, for instance, someone breaks into the pizza farm store and stuffs the pizza oven full of lard. Lard, of all things. It's a nightmare to clean up. And even once the pizza farmers burn it off, it smells of old rank lard for weeks. So the pizza farmers, assuming that the culprit is obvious here, retaliate by changing the burger farm sign to murder farm, and it just begins to spiral completely out of control. But what happens next? Well, that is for tomorrow on the Great Pennsylvania Food War, or something better than that as a title. Anyway, thanks for watching and or listening. We will see you tomorrow. Hoop House. Hoop House.